Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning to wherever you are in the world, and welcome to the season opener of ARL GT3 season, GT3 trophy. It is season 10, and it's myself, Adam Reed. Alongside me is Nathan Richard. For the production, it is Jim Cunningham. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this gets on. It's our GT3s out for season X of this one, and we start. Where else? The Daytona International Speedway at the Daytona Road Course. We have a huge grid ahead of us. I'm really looking forward to it. It's myself, Adam Reed, as I said, Nathan Richards alongside me. Nathan, it is going to be an absolutely fascinating race tonight.
It is. I can't wait. Of course, a big welcome to everybody in the chat. So we've got over 60 cars, I believe, taking part here tonight, which is a rather big grid. I think double the largest grid I've ever commentated on. So it will certainly be an eventful evening, that's for sure. And of course, no better place at one of the most iconic tracks of American motorsport, the Daytona International Speedway. Of course, when you look at the track map, it looks quite an easy track. But when you actually go out there onto circuit, it's a mighty beast, that's for sure. Of course, in this championship we have the pros, the pro-ams, and the ams here. So we're going to have also quite a big disparity in the grid. So once we get to cars being lapped in the later parts of the race, which I'm sure we will get, things could get interesting here.
Could, and there's so many different opportunities for a lot of these drivers to be able to really show off and hone their skills around this very challenging Daytona road course. You know, this circuit very famously used for the Rolex 24 Hours for the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, and already you're seeing some of the difficulties that a lot of drivers are having to deal with for around this circuit. We now run aboard with our BMW M4 GT4. Head round the banking, weaving on the banking as well. That's quite the risky business. You're already seeing there, looking into our different classes. We've seen the Pro-Ams are going to be in the green, the AMs are going to be in the white and the reds, which are going to be coming out later. It's going to be our Pro category, and you're seeing there Anders Meyer in that BMW M4 GT4. And then in the night conditions as well, so visibility is going to be looking very difficult for this qualifying session.
Yeah, it certainly will. And of course, for people here that might be new to this series, you might be thinking, what sort of drivers are we going to be looking out for in this championship? Well, Our last season's champion won't be here, unfortunately, but he will be here in the remainder of the rounds, that being Leon Mishka, who won the last championship by over 74 points. Rather dominant indeed. And then second place last season was Haroldus Joe Tortus, who currently is on the top spot here tonight in the pro class. He was 100 points ahead of third place in the championship. So, you know, himself and Mishka are definitely two drivers to keep an eye on in this championship. And one of the other returning drivers who finished P4 last season was Pierre Urbizu, who currently is on track, but I don't think has set a lap time yet, so we'll have to see what he can do. But yeah, it's going to be a really close championship this season, and of course we've got the Pro-Ams and the AMs to also look into, and there's a few drivers as well that I'm starting to recognise the names of that I've seen in other series here for Apex Racing, so can't wait to get this all underway.
For sure, as you say, there's some very familiar names. So when I commentated over on here, he's in the McLaren. He's 46 currently. It's Christophe Herbinot, the Belgian driver who's been so good in a Porsche Carrera Cup car. When I've managed to cover his races, but he's in a whole different beast, going from that Porsche Carrera Cup car to a McLaren 720S GT3. I wonder how that's going to change up, because you know you have to really adapt as a racing driver. It's in racing. Oh, we have an off already there from one of the Acuras. That's not the most ideal start for their run, but we're already seeing two wide here on the banking. Really interesting, because of course all these classes, they're not getting much time. We've had a 32-minute session, and each class out here is out on circuit for 10 minutes. You know, that's not a lot of time to get a lap in. It's around this Daytona course. You've seen almost 2-minute lap time, which you know you can get about maybe 6, 7 if you're lucky.
Yeah, definitely. So it's about being clinical here in qualifying, especially at a track like Daytona, where there's always time to find. So no matter what lap time you've got, you can always edge a little bit more out of that lap time, and we can constantly see the gaps at the front change around. And on that provisional pole is going to be Anders Mythe, who I believe was the season 8 champion. So missed out last season, but was the champion the season before. So certainly another driver to keep an eye on in this championship. And currently, he's 0.2 ahead of Joe Tortus.
So as they now head through, it is still the Pro-Am there of Malik Palic at this moment in time in that Ford Mustang. His Core Sim Racing 1 teammate Mikko Nurmi is also behind him, the Finnish driver, still sitting there in second place at this moment in time. We're having a look now at our Pro category to continue to wind their way around the circuit. Look at that, Howard Jotaus in the I believe in the Corvette, the V8 roaring Corvette in that number 120. He was on a purple 2 sectors here. I think the circuit is split up into 5 sectors here. Already seeing a bit of purples all throughout the lap. They'll start to continue on here. Let's see if Palic will have his 143.3 lap detained, and it looks like nothing much there. There goes Giannani in the McLaren 720S GT3. He goes to the top with the 143.374. Really good time there from the Italian, but the laps keep coming in, and it's not quite up to speed for these drivers. The tires, the brakes, the temperatures, just not quite there, but they're still going to have to try in these last dying moments. Otherwise, they will be finding themselves mingling around with those Pro-Ams.
Yeah, definitely. Quite surprising to see such a split here between the pros and, you know, how far down some of them are. I mean, we've got Urbizu and Steinhoff in P16 and 17. Some of our pros are also a lot further down than that. So, interesting start here for the pros, that is safe to say, but it is Gio Bonini at the top of the timings by 20 thousandths of a second to Panic in second and Nurmi in third. Both of those two running the Ford Mustang, so it seems that must be one of the powerful cars around this circuit. And here we can see Haroldus Jotautus in P5 at the moment. Of course, runner-up last season, certainly a driver to keep an eye on. Heading into the chicane, has got a purple sector 2 and 3, green in the first and fourth here. So this could be a chance of looking to try and go to the top. Has only got to find 0.3 over Gio Bonini here as we head our way on the final banking up towards the start-finish line. What will it be here for Geototus as he heads up to the line in a couple of seconds' time. Will it be that provisional pole position? No. Must have made a mistake in that final sector there. Loses a second.
Yeah, of course, there's plenty of opportunities to kind of make or break your lap. And one of the corners there, as you were seeing, with the Le Mans chicane, it's so difficult. You're relying kind of the sponsor boards on the right-hand side to potentially on the right-hand side to get them into a great position. We've also got a new pole sitter there. It looks like it's Anders Meyer, the Norwegian in the BMW M4 GT3 for MC for Racing Lab. It seems like Racing Lab esports, so he is looking pretty quick at this moment in time. But yeah, going back to what I was talking about with the Le Mans chicane, it's so difficult to get a braking point. You know, you're using the sponsor balls on the right hand side usually to kind of get an idea of where to brake. Otherwise, you know, you've not really got an opportunity to. You're gonna have to randomly guess and hope and pray that you've picked the brake point right. And also, such a narrow chicane in a wide variety of things. And these GT3s, you know, it's a very, very tough fit for these guys. No matter what car you're in, it's going to be a very, very important part of this qualifying session and the race. You know, you can definitely find a cut track at some points, so yeah, you've got to really be careful for that. As you see there, the BMW M4 crossing over, I think that might be we'll have to look to see who that is at the moment in time. It is Anders Meyer, I'm being told in my ears, number 120. So he is very much going to be continuing on, but still with that purple sector, still another green in there, but he's not looking promising on this one. I think maybe the pace has slowed up a little bit here, and he's diving off into the pits. But we still find our top five being now our top six, in fact, all full of pro class category cars, and it looks like it's going to be Joteas who's going to the top with the Lithuanian, putting in a 43.2. Great lap time there from him.
It certainly is, and I'm just looking at the gaps here on the timing screen. The top 46 are separated by just over a second. That is insane. Very close gaps, as we do see Urbizu there jumping up into P2, around 30 thousandths away from that top spot, and Maya still in P3, I believe, will not be continuing here in this session, so it will be P3 for the BMW M4. As here we can see Gio and Ian once again, of course, was on pole position for quite a long time here in this session, but has now dropped to P5 and is only, I think, around a 10th off pole. So that is an insane gap between our top five here in this championship. And as qualifying has gone along, we have started to see more of the status quo between the different classes. Of course, all of the pros pretty much are at the top. There's a couple of the pro-ams in the mix there with the pros, and then the pro-ams all together, and then the ams pretty much right at the back of the field. But of course, that is expected. A lot of the ams are a lot less experienced. You know, they don't tend to have that higher pace, but a lot of them still have good racecraft, so we've got to watch out for those guys later on in the race when they're starting to move their way forward, because with such a big grid here, Adam, there's going to be a lot of mistakes and a lot of contacts and incidents here, I think.
Yeah, 10-1 is going to be an absolute nightmare for some of our drivers, but that is going to be qualifying done for our GT3 drivers, and we're going to be going into a very, very interesting race. I believe it's going to be an hour with a mandatory pit stop, so how this is going to be played out. And now, of course, going to a warm-up for now. So a couple of extra minutes to dial in your setup, maybe get an idea of what you can do in terms of fuel. But yeah, this is going to be a very, very busy warm-up session. In fact, they get 3 minutes. So that is pretty much the equivalent of a lap.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, some drivers will choose to sit in the pits. Some of them will think, right, let's go out and try and dial ourselves in even more, and hopefully we'll see the qualifying results as well soon, so we can see who's starting where on this field, because it is going to be a really close grid, that is for sure. But of course, this is a full season. This is only round 1 here at Daytona. We have got 9 other rounds after this one, and we'll have a quick run through what we have in store. So next time out in round 2, we have Watkins Glen. Then we head off to Sonoma, Spa, Mosport, VIR, Road America, Magny Core, Interlagos, and then round 10 at Road Atlanta. 10 brilliant circuits. Most of them I've driven. Sonoma and Mosport I've never had the chance to drive, but I've commentated over them in the past, and they are really good circuits. So I can't wait to see of course, what the drivers get up to once we start to progress through the championship.
We are in for some really, really fun action, and of course you will be able to catch that all live on the Apex Racing TV channel at 8 PM every Tuesday. So now you're seeing these cars at this moment in time, very much trying to get into the flow, get those final before going into our main race. We see really interesting to see how the classes are and also the cars out on second, because there's an amazing variety, but of course we are missing some. Normally you'd see a Ferrari in here. We're seeing plenty of Ford Mustangs, which is very intriguing, because I think in real life, they're still in that development stage of trying to find that extra couple of horsepower, that extra aero, and just trying to find a way to go from that base Ford Mustang that you're currently seeing on your screen on the just near the barrier side. But they've got to turn that kind of into an Evo in the next year or two, and get a couple more, a couple of more, customers in there. They've got already Hubs Racing Team who have moved from Mercedes to that Ford Mustang. I think for them they're going to try and get a couple more, but it's been so popular in sim racing. You barely go into an Assetto Corsa Competizione or iRacing league and not have that Ford Mustang. It will be very, very strange to have. So yeah, thinking about the Ferrari, they have very similar characteristics to the McLaren, as we now see the warm-up has been completed. But overall, we've got a really big variety group. We don't have an Audi either. They've got a really interesting situation as they look to turn their noses towards Formula One, the pinnacle of sport. But I think there's some really, really interesting points here. Meanwhile, we have a grid, and let's go through together, Nathan. We got Taradas and Joe Tatus ahead of Pierre Bizou, with Anders Meyer in P3. Yannick Steinhoff in 4th place ahead of Eros Giannani, the Frenchman in 5th place ahead of the Belgian Christophe Herbinot. Wonder how he'll get on today. Then we find Herbert Linter ahead of Igor Wazowski, the Polish driver. A really good result there for him. Then we find our first Pro-Am of Malik Paluch. Then we find Rup Kirpika, Kirkpia, and Miko Nurmi in P11 there, with Matt Loveridge in P12. Briton starting right outside there on the 6th row of the grid.
Certainly, and we have Tim Kern in P13 with Danny Neo in P14, Roman Beauclair, we have Eric Roseth, and then one of our other Pro-Ams, that be Nikolai Mielda. Then we have Dominic Engel, Aidan Young, and our first of our AMs, Tommy Vidal, rounding off the top 20 here in the field, followed by Alexei Barry, Callian May, Michael Eberstein, and then Stephen David, our top 24.
Absolutely, and then moving on, we see Alex Rogers there, the Briton, in 25th, followed by Pavlo Denisenko. Then we see Japo Rampazzo, and then Sven Lotzman with Jan Volmers and Sami Hitsakinen in 30th place. Manuel Piendil and Marcus on the next row of the grid. I believe that's row 16 onto row 70. We find Sergio Bajo and Thomas Derutia, followed by Florian Nuffler and Artem Udod in 36th.
And in 37th, we have Daniele Chialfi, followed by Johan Palomino, Glenn Grondelez, and then Pierre Bourrez, the top 40. Then we have Callum Beamont, Carl Winkler, Ronald Grossman. Not gone too well for those guys in the Pro-Am class, down at the rear of the field. But then we have Jason Hodgson, we have Christian Malchak, Justin Roninka, Jan Schutler, and then Lenny Kiefer, running off the top 48.
So we'll see if we can speed through this. Well, we won't. We're going to green here, and the season is underway here at Daytona into towards turn number 1. Some will go aggressive, some will go quite passive here, and they now make their way through. We're already seeing 4 wide. They try and tiptoe their way through the first opening couple of corners, but they maintain to be as they head into the horseshoe for the first time. Still chaotic as predicted, but it seems to be clean so far. But they head their way around. They're searching for that little bit of space to find them a little bit of gaps, and we now see Joe Tatus, who's going to surge out in front in this 1 hour race here with the Corvette just ahead of the slide there for one of our cars, and it's Mercedes Wazowski, who's unfortunately gone round on that one. I think he's just about managed to save the car. It looks like he has. They'll carry on their way and on towards the banking here, the famous banking at Daytona. Look at Anders Meyer already underneath the rear wing there of Joe Tatus, and especially with that straight line speed, effective front engine BMW M4, he might be able to get a run here just before the end of this first lap here.
Yeah, definitely. We'll see what Meyer can do heading in towards the chicane. I presume we'll just sit back for now and just kind of use the GT3 ahead of him. Also, for his braking references, not to brake too late or too early into the bus stop as they head their way through for the first time, and still comfortably. Tatus is in the lead, Meyer in second, Steenhoff in third, around a second back here, so has lost a slight bit of time. And then Urbasu has got a right gaggle of cars behind him. Herbino, Leitner, Gio and Arnie all looking to make moves now as they head their way onto the second lap of the race into turn one. And we can see there Herbino pretty much squeezed in by two of the Mercedes as we head our way into the braking zone. Who's going to go for a move up the inside? It will be Leitner there, up to P5, has to go to the inside. He's looking for two moves there, but I don't think he's going to get alongside unless he can get the perfect exit. A mistake there from Urbasu puts Leitner into P4, and then the two McLarens up into P5 and 6.
Absolutely, I thought I was watching NASCAR there, thinking back to the Daytona 500 as you posted there at the around the Daytona Daytona Speedway. So looking like it's going to be Christopher Herbino there in fifth. He's just trying to hunt down there Norbert Liesner, but this is back here with Danny Neo. I think he's had a bit of an incident here from what I can hear. Down in towards turn number one. We're in a little bit of a slow-mo at this moment in time. Let's see what's happening. Oh, we see a red BMW coming up the inside, and who's going to cause this one? It might be, as I said, that red BMW. That is coming in very, very hot. They'll turn into the corner. Danny Neo, it's almost three wide there, but it looks like now the Mercedes being pushed up there, and it looks like Danny Neo is going to lose it on his own. The black and orange car is going to just slide it in the Mercedes. Unfortunately, there for Danny Neo has dropped all the way down now to right toward the back of the field, 25th in fact. So very bad luck there. We look back here with Christian Herbino for P. Looks for now P4 on circuit.
Indeed, we continue on, and we can see our top two separated by less than a tenth of a second at the moment, as we can see all of our classes. Of course, in the pros it's still Yatautas and Meyer leading the way, and then in the pro-ams it's Palak and Nurmi, and then in the AMs it's Vidal and Rampazzo as they continue their way on through the first couple of corners here. Of course, it is a 1 hour race. Pit stops, they will need to do a pit stop because there is a 60% fuel capacity, so around 30-35 minutes we'll see the cars head into the pit lane. Some of them might be a little bit slower on this opening stint to save fuel, to have the less pit stop time as we head our way through this first sector. Here is Gio and Arnie, who started 5th, down to P6 at the moment, behind Christophe Herbino, who made a place on the opening couple of laps. So we'll have to see what those two can get up to in the McLaren. And then, of course, ahead of them we have Steinhoff and Leitner, both in the Mercedes, as we head our way through up onto the banking once again. The great thing to see, though, Adam, is we have a Corvette, a BMW, a Mercedes and a McLaren in the top 5 here.
You absolutely do, and it really is incredible seeing the all different manufacturers. We see the Acura in there. We see Tim Kern, who's looking to overtake the it looks like the number 144 Mercedes there. The 142 BMW there of Eric Rosseth, as they carry on their way down in towards the left-right chicane of Le Mans. They had their way through Linus for now, but they will be really looking to see if they can potentially find the X there, and that's exactly what Tim Kern has done. The German driver now latching himself onto the back here of Eric Rosseth, and we'll try and find a way here with that slipstream. You can't really bum draft him whatsoever, but you're getting a good eye view here, and he's pretty much is covering his whole breaking point. He's going to have to move out here. possibly to the right-hand side, but he has given a little bit of a bump to the BMW. Now, this is going to get very interesting. Through they go, and that Ford ahead there is, I'm not sure who that is, the 276, so that might be Paluch or Nurmi, actually. So that is in fact Nurmi, 10th overall, and then round the outside in toward the horseshoe. That's a risky move, a bit of contact, in fact, there for the Ford, and then someone's gone round. I wonder who that is. Oh dear, I think that might be a keeper. It might be. I'm not too sure this moment in time. We'll probably get a replay from our broadcast, but yeah, not ideal moment there for some of our drivers.
No, certainly not. But of course, it's the opening part of the race. It's expected to have some cars, unfortunately, fall down the field. Here's Sven Lotman as he heads his way into the braking zone. That's going to be one of the BMWs going a bit hot into the braking zone, tapping the Mustang round. And then also there's a BMW spun around as well ahead. So that must be one of two incidents happening down at the braking zone there at the hairpin. And of course, Lotman, I think, might be out of the race after that one. I can't see him there at all. And there's Tautus, who's disappeared for a second. We'll catch up with him in a quick second as we have to try and figure out who's where on the circuit. There we go, back with the live cameras. And of course, the top three hasn't changed. And the same goes for the top three in the Pro-Ams. But I've noticed Vidal is no longer at the front of the AM category. I think he might have been one of those cars caught up in that incident further on, because he's now down into P33 overall, P7 in class. I think that second BMW we saw there, Adam, was Tommy Vidal.
Oh, that would have been so unfortunate there for Vidal, and he was on for a really strong result, and especially in these early stages. But it's a very tricky circuit in the Daytona road course. So many bumps all throughout the circuit. It's not one of the smoothest surfaces in motor racing. Oh, there's a dive there from one of our Acuras, and that's going to be a bold move. In fact, someone's gone wide there, and it is one of the Mercedes. I wonder who that is. We can't quite see with the number plate on the side. The Mercedes, in fact, don't have number plates on the side, it looks like. But yeah, well, not sure who that is. I wonder if there's going to be any movement from my timing screen. Not too much at this moment in time, so we'll get back to you on that one.
Indeed, as they all carry their way on down in towards the braking zone. Here is Eros Giannini, who's on the back of Herbino still. Of course, these two have been going at it since lap 1. We can see the gaps, of course, increasing between Herbino and Leitner. So the top four are in their own little battle, and then we have P5 and 6 having a battle on the bank's left-hander. And then, of course, behind we have another whole gaggle of cars. All of our Pro-Ams there, from P1 down towards P8 there, all within a couple of tenths of each other here. Is there going to be a move here for Nurmi? He's closing in, looking to try and go for something, but of course not into the chicane. We'll have to look for it down in towards turn 1, which we know around Daytona is a very risky braking zone to go for a move. So you've got to be careful when heading down there at full speed, especially with the car to the right or the left of you. And then, of course, further ahead, we've also got another battle forming. Let's see what happens here then.
We actually absolutely do, and I think we've had an overtake in the top 5 of the pro category. Eros Giannini, who's gone through on Christophe Herbino on that one. That is going to be that's going to be a good move there for the Frenchman as he carries on through here. We now look at Malik Paluch, and now we see the battle with Aiden Young, because Aiden Young is gone up 10 here from his starting position, but that's going to be the Mercedes of Tim Kern who's gone up the inside there. Kern, who's been very, very good, very, very strong in these opening stages in the pro category. The Mercedes looking very, very, very much trying to push forward, and there's a couple of potential maneuvers throughout there. I think that was also I think that might be a keeper in the Ford Mustang who may be looking at a move there, but there's still a couple of drivers at this moment in time still trying to maybe pull a move here or there, and maybe search for a gap before the pit stop fade, because you're, as well as batting for overall points, you're also trying to look for your class leader as well, or if you're in that league, you're looking for your second place, trying to maybe put a car in between them and yourself. So very much tactical driving as well throughout these early stages of this race.
Certainly, and of course with Tim Kern there, of course the pace isn't electric from him, so he's just doing a good job of holding everyone behind, defending where he needs to, and still keeping his P9 spot. Of course, we've got Mikko Nurmi here, who's in the Pro-Am category, looking to make moves ahead of some of our pro cars. So something tells you maybe he's in the wrong category here. That the same goes for Alec. These two looking to battle here in towards turn number 1. Of course, this is for the lead of class between the two Ford Mustangs, but they are both closing in on, I think that being Tim Kern ahead as we head our way in towards turn number 1. That could get close to contact. I think there has been some contact because Nurmi has gone round and has lost his rear wing. A big shame there for Mikko Nurmi. Luckily didn't collect any other cars in the process, but that is a race ender there, I think, unfortunately.
Yeah, he's going to have no rear downforce here on this one. And this is Sam Clark. I think the McLaren might have maybe had an instant. Oh, he's just lost it on his own. Just dropped the back end on his own. And that's why he's got to spend more time. And we now look back here with Mikko Nurmi. This was still a replay here of the Finnish driver. Yeah, just missed his braking point. Went into the back of, I believe, the Ford and just rear wing, and that is where it fell off. He'll have no rear downforce, and I think he's going to call that a day, unfortunately. But he's still going around. But it's, as I say, down in 16th, and let's have a look and see if we'll see if maybe a couple of cars may gain up on him, including his Pro-Am rival of Stefan David in the Acura. So we'll have to keep an eye on those gaps.
Indeed, and we can see as well Barry jumping up to P3 in class, P15 overall, and then behind there's just a whole battle of cars still going along here. And you can see Mikko Nurmi should be heading back to the pits here because that car is not very drivable. You can see all these cars just passing him now as he'll be preparing to go into the pit lane. But of course, we've got a lot of cars on this grid, and all of those cars need setups. And of course, part of Apex Racing, who host this event, we also have Apex Racing Academy, where you can get the best iRacing setups and data packs for the new season of iRacing. Of course, Season 3 has only just begun, so make sure to head over to apexracing.com to have a look at the Apex Racing Academy, which also, we'll discuss this later on, there are prizes for this championship, and the winners of the classes do get themselves a subscription for free to the Apex Racing Academy, but we'll talk a little bit about that later on. And of course, one last thing to mention, we do have the ARL Endurance Championship starting soon. Of course, the GTPs, LMP2s and GT3s. Entries are open at apexracingleague.com, so head over there, guys, if you do want to take part and get yourselves signed up. Of course, I don't think the grid will be quite 60 cars, but it won't be far away, that's for sure.
For sure, there's going to be some really interesting racing all throughout each of our different league races that is going on. And we now look here at Rupi Kurkipa, the Finnish driver in that Ford Mustang. He's gaining now on his Acura and pro rival Roman Bokla, as he now continues on his way down through the banking and on towards the Le Mans chicane. It's kind of best really try and find that run here. Looking back further on, we've got Matt Loveridge, who started in the top 12. He dropped the place, unfortunately, here. He's under pressure here from Nikolai Mjelde, the Norwegian in the BMW M4 GT4. A lot of Race Lab esports drivers here as well, a whole team. Very much a part of this, and this is Anders Mieda looking to try and potentially find a move here on Joe Tatus, but of course looking pretty calm at this moment in time. But we're now inviting a four-car battle as Yannick Steinhoff and Norbert Lietner in the Mercedes just in the background there, starting to potentially invite themselves in this little gaggle of cars. Last time around, I believe, in fact, it was Lietner who got the fastest lap at 43.574. As well as Anders Maida. He also did a 33.591. So it's pretty competitive times there from the chasing cars. Look at the two Mercedes. They're going to be absolutely hounding the two leaders now. We thought it was going to be a two-horse race, but no, it has turned into a four-horse race here, Nathan.
It certainly is between our P5 and 6 car at the moment here. Gio Manini and Herbano still looking to battle here, but no moves have been made thus far. And of course, Urbizu is starting to creep back into this battle here for the top 5 in the Acura. And just looking over in the chat, we have Leon Mishka, of course, our champion from last season. Unfortunately, isn't here today, and he says greetings from the Green Hell. So, has chosen to go to the Nürburgring over us. In my opinion, that is not viable. You should be here racing, Leon, not over at the Nürburgring. I'm totally not jealous of you, and that's why I'm saying it. But of course, hope you're enjoying it over at the Green Hell, and hopefully, Leon, you're going to be back next time out because you're missing out on a great night of racing. I mean, the racing so far has been action-packed. And oh, is that Yotatus out of the race, or is he in the pit lane? Oh no, it was a glitch. Oh, that scared me.
Don't worry, that frightened me as well. I was having looked down at my timing screen, the scoreboard we have that have been provided brilliantly by Apex Racing TV. So useful to be catching a lot of this within this grid here. We now see Jacopo Rampazzo, the Italian in the Acura, or I believe in McLaren, my apologies on that one, looking around the outside, trying some different maneuverable line, but I think we're going to have a spin there in the background. Not quite sure who that was, but one of our that would be Manuel Pendil. It looks like he's gone around in his Porsche, and that's super unfortunate. Oh, it's going to find a bit of amateur traffic here, and they turn their way in toward the horseshoe, and that's not an ideal moment there for the German driver.
Indeed, and I'm not sure if people are pitting or something because the timing screen is going absolutely crazy at the moment. So I presume people are starting to pit, or it's still glitching because people are everywhere right now. As here is Piendel in P27 at the moment overall. Of course, P6, I believe, in class, if I've not got that mistaken. And then here is Make Palak at the front of the Pro-Am category. Of course, behind him is Mielda and then Barry in P15 overall, P3 in class. So a great job by many of our Pro-Ams this evening. And then things have calmed back down. We can see our top three back as they were before. Yotauta's ahead of Meyer, ahead of Steinhoff, of course, Corvette, BMW and Mercedes, with Leitner closing in, also looking to make moves. But the good thing is as well, of course, fuel is one thing they need to be wary of. Of course, pitting, you want to have the shortest pit stop possible. So drivers here will be looking to save fuel when heading into the slipstream, because that slipstream is going to overpower them and not use as much fuel as you normally would. So it's clever here by the drivers just to tuck in behind their competitors ahead.
They absolutely are, and they're very much looking at a big potential for those pit stops to come in very soon. You know, that's going to be so important. The fastest lap still being actually held here by Norbert Leitner, the Hungarian there in the Mercedes right at the back of your screen. You can see there 1 minute 43.349 you're seeing, and in fact a personal best by Haraldas Jotatus. So he's starting to push a little bit now, opening that gap up to about 4.5 tenths as you're seeing. Meanwhile, Christoph Herbino is trying to fight off a couple of cars of Bizu and Giannani. I think the Acura and the McLaren are very much trying to push Herbino forward. You know, he's almost 4 seconds back, but I would love to see Herbino and Bizu and Giannani get into this battle, but you're not quite sure how they're going to do it. Anyway, it looks like Bizu is going to fly on through in the Acura, but that gap is going to extend to 4 seconds. We look back here and lock onto this battle because it is a very tough one. I think they're going to have to try and slingshot themselves forward here, Nathan.
Yeah, certainly. I think part of it could be the fact that these guys haven't quite got the pace of the leaders, but it could also be fuel saving, so they have a shorter pit stop once they go in later on. We are 19 minutes of the way through of this 1 hour race, and we can see here Herbino already on the back of Urbizu, once again looking to try and jump back up into P5, unless he's content on sitting behind as we head our way down to the braking zone for turn 1. And they stay how they were heading onto the bank in Urbizu P5, followed by the 2 McLarens in 6th and 7th. But I've got to say, Palak is doing a great job behind P8 overall. He's only a second away from some of our pros, only 6 seconds away from the lead. So, yeah, you do wonder, is Palak in the right class here? In my opinion, should be right with the pros, of course, behind us. There's another 6 of the pro cars. But here is a replay. Here is Heeskanum as they head their way through the chicane. Let's see what happens here ahead. There is no, a lot on the curb, but we know, Adam, that curb, the grass, the gravel, it is a killer, isn't it? It's lethal.
It is absolutely lethal. It's a sim racer's worst nightmare in iRacing. You know, you touch a little bit of grass, you find a little bit of dirt, and you know you're instantly going round if you lose the back end, and there's no chance of saving it unless you can, you know, somehow by some magic you just flick the rear round to the left. Otherwise, you're going straight into the wall, which is not ideal. And I think we're going to be getting a replay of this. This was, I think this is actually now live because this is Christoph Herbino, in fact, and he is still behind there, Pierre Ubizu, as he continues to just try and gain on this fight. But, you know, there's nothing to do. And I think it might be best to just try and save your, you know, as I say, try and save your fuel here, but nope, Christoph Herbino wants to have a little bit of a tussle here. He's almost bump drafting Urbizu as well, down in towards this first corner. They'll cross over the start-finish line, and in towards turn number 1. Just backs off there, saves a bit more fuel for the Belgian driver. And Gianni, I think, going to get a little bit frustrated maybe behind his manufactured team, where we now see and Bokla, they continue on their way onto the horseshoe. They're a little bit of embroidered in the battle for P9 on this one. P8 in class as well. Paluch very much in a really good stage, because that pro-am, Paluch is 8th place. He's got 2 seconds to Gianni, and of course a second and a half to Bokla as well. But you know, if these guys can definitely find the pace and start drafting each other, find their way back up to the pram. But you know, you've got to really give credit to that Ford driver there. He's very much in a really great stage, really great rhythm, and you know, you don't really want to destroy it there for Paluch. Very much a driver to really look out for. He will get moved up in maybe by the end of the season.
Yeah, there's more. I'm sure there's possibilities if he does prove that he can be at that top pace. Of course, ignoring a couple of those that have had incidents at the start, the top 13 is all pros bar 1. So that just shows how good that Paluch is performing at the moment, and of course can just start to keep pulling away, because Bokla and those behind are all in their own little train and not really focusing on gaining time. They're just running their race here up until the pit stops, which will be in and around 10 to 15 minutes time, as we just see here Jacopo Rampazzo, who is the leader now of the AM category. Of course, Kiefer in second and Maltrek in third for the AMs. That's going to be a McLaren, a BMW and a Porsche in the top 3 of that category. So yes, the BMW, the McLaren, the Mercedes are, I think, the 3 most popular cars here that we've got on the grid. But then we've got a couple of Fords, a couple of Acuras, we've got, I think, 1 sole Corvette, and that is the race leader. So sometimes it proves that maybe it's not down to the cars, it's down to the driver. As here we have Roman Bokla on the back of, defending from Tim Kern as they head through the first couple of sectors. And the Acura, there's a couple of those up in the top 10. The rest of them are a little bit further down, so possibly not the best track for this car, because Bokla is looking to struggle a bit here.
Absolutely, and we're on board here with Tim Kern and the driver eye camera. The fastest lap has actually changed hands. It has now gone to Rupi Kirkeeper, the Finnish driver, down in P11. So the driver, in fact, behind Tim Kerr. So I wonder if he'll very much been on a higher push lap there. You can see the best times that every driver has set so far. And we now see Tim Kerr getting into that situation. Let's see if he's going to maybe start lifting off. There you go. The lifting codes is really starting to come into effect here for some of our drivers, especially with Tinker, knowing he's in knowing he's in that tow, he's in that draft. He can very much pull up to the back here of Roman Bokla, and he can start backing off, saving that fuel, which will be oh so important. So it's Joe Tatus from Mir, from Steinhoff in the top 3 of our pro category, the pro amps of Palchuk, then Mielda and Barry in your pro am, and then we find Rampazzo, Kiefer and Malachek in our top 3 of the amateurs.
Indeed, and of course, when we saw the fastest laps a moment ago, and we had Kirkeeper, I think, with the fastest one, everybody else, their fastest laps were within 2 or 3 tenths of each other, and that just shows that everyone here has got very good pace. It's not all about that overall top speed on your laps, it's about having that consistency. which is what we've seen for a lot of those near the top. And you start to look down, and the consistent laps are just a couple of tenths slower. And of course, over a race distance, that really builds up. So it's not all about just pumping out the fastest lap. It's just about being consistent and running your race plan. Of course, a lot of drivers here, they've got specific plans of what they want to do, and when they want to pit or how they want to run things, and they've got to follow that all race long. If they start disobeying that, things might not go to plan for them later on in the race. But here we do still see Rupert Kerkeeper in P11 at the moment. Of course, just sitting back from Kern and Boakler in P9 and 10 as they head their way onto another lap. Lap 15 they were on, of course, 25 minutes into this race, so nearly at that halfway point, nearly at the pit stop point as well, where things start to sometimes get a bit messy, especially when there's so many cars so close together. Pit lane incidents, more than possible.
Yeah, you're right. Pit lane is going to be very, very much chaotic. So, be aware, keep an eye on what's happening out on that one. Again, we look back to this kind of secondary car battle, back to the primary battle for the lead here. And Joe Tatus is actually having to come across a little bit of traffic here. It's only a singular car, but that is one of our Porsches in the amateur category. So I don't know if that's going to how much of a nuisance that car is going to be, but hopefully it's not going to provide too much. And it's actually a Mercedes. My apology on that one. I thought that was a I thought that was that might have been not entirely sure who's this one. I'm just having a look at my just having a look and see how that could be. But yeah, my it's not quite showing on me, but it looks like Anders Meyer is just sitting back here. So this has definitely got an opportunity to change in these next couple of minutes. With approaching 27 minutes into this race, we're almost at halfway distance, and the pit stops are definitely going to be open now. So we'll definitely have to see when that mandatory stop does get that mandatory stop does come in. A couple of faster times have been put in recently, especially into that mid pack around the P10 to P20 zone. So a couple of drivers starting to put maybe a little bit more to see if they can gain up to the back of some of their ride before they then finally make a stop. There's also looks like the 32 potentially in the AM category, so that car is going to be coming up to be lapsed by our leaders as well, and this is looking pretty tight as well, Nathan.
It certainly is, and I noticed as well further behind we've got Dominic Engel right to the back of Callie and May for P18. Those two got very close together a couple of moments ago, as we do have our first pit stop scene. Gio Bonini is into the pit lane for the pros. The first one, I believe, at least, to pit because of fuel, not because of damage. Obviously, I think we've seen a few cars into the pits because of damage so far, but here we go. Eros Giannini is into the pits in the McLaren, and and he's gone too far forward, has had to reverse, and that's cost him a crucial second. That could lose him maybe a 2 or 3 positions in some of the battles. I mean, look at there, Boakler down to Loveridge is just over a second. That's potentially 5 positions lost if he was in that, if he was in that battle, for example.
Yeah, you're right. We've seen plenty of times where, things like that has happened and it's cost them seconds, maybe even more. And it's going to be one of those ones where you have to get it spot on. We've seen it plenty of times in, your stock cars, your sports cars, your single seaters. But, when you have moments like that, it really does cost you a whole hunk of time. Looking back into the battles here, we have Matt Loveridge, it looks like there in his Mercedes, chasing down Aiden Young in his Ford Mustang, the US driver on home soil, where he'll find the majority of his the calendar, because we got about half the season in America. He likes to Road Atlanta, Road America. We've got VIR. We've got also Daytona, which we're currently at as well, and we've also got Sonoma. So a load of American circuits. I think Young is definitely going to feel at home with a few of these circuits. So he's really doing a great job here, challenging that top 10. But again, it's still very, very tactical in terms of pit stops, and it doesn't look like anyone is diving into the pit this time around. But there's still plenty of time for those pit stops to be made, and fuel to be saved. And again, this all counts up. End of the 1 hour race. We're now seeing Loveridge trying those different lines into a long train here. We look further back here. This is Rampazzo looking on the inside of Engel there. So Engel, no, not Maro Engel, the big GT driver who should be in Nürburgring right now, but another Engel that is on our entry list, and that looks like a McLaren there. Rampazzo looking up the inside of Engel, and it looks like this is Italian on German drivers. Still side by side, they'll head in towards the second horseshoe, but the Porsche has got that brilliant exit in that V6 box inline engine. We've got all the power down, and he's managed to stay ahead on that one. Great battle between two drivers.
Certainly, and you could see Rampazzo there was looking to go through, but at some points was a reluctant, knowing that he doesn't really want to end his race or get into contact, and at some point he just kind of let Engel continue on, and he'll try and fight that one another day here in this race as they continue their way on, of course, down towards the chicane. And then further ahead, we are starting to see Palak come under pressure here. Bokla, he's only 4/10 back. That gap was comfortably 2 seconds about 15 minutes ago, so I'm not sure what's happened there to Palak, as just, I think, came into some pressure as our race leader is in. Yotautas in the Corvette has gone in early. Urbazu, we have Herbano as well, all filing into the pits. There's a few drivers still staying out, but many of them think that lap 19 is the lap to go in and, of course, make your pit stops, and hopefully nobody overruns it and gets into a bit of contact, or, well, hopefully no one runs a bit too far and has to reverse back out, as they all make it in quite nicely, and they should all exit probably very similar to the positions they were in when they went into the pits.
Absolutely. We'll have to see what happens at this moment in time. They're all just diving in to make their pit stops, and it looks like the likes of Steinhoff, Leitner, and Mayer, they're all going to have to react to this as well, because, of course, you don't want to be staying out there too long. Yes, it shortens your pit stop time, but also, as you say, it's going to be ideal, and we've got to run out of pit lane. Oh, we've got someone reversing down pit road. I think someone's completely missed their stop box. I'm not too sure, in fact. That is a very strange thing that we've seen. I'm not very much an iRacer myself, but it's looking like it's signing out on that one.
Yep. That was not ideal for that driver. I'm not sure who it was, but it was one of the Acuras who, unfortunately, I think he's done in this race. That is safe to say. But I think that was a really good pit stop by Yotautas. Of course, got out quite comfortably ahead of Bokla and those behind, but of course they were never really in much of a battle together. The key thing to keep an eye on is where Yotautas will come out compared to Anders Meyer, who stays out, I think, another lap. Many of them pit in as we head our way. No, never mind. We'll also pit, but decided to go a bit later before entering that pit lane, of course, all the way down to pit lane speed, and they'll feed their way into their pit box. And then here we can see Matt Loveridge as well entering the pit lane, up 6 positions, but of course should lose some of those after those who have pitted will make their way past. And here we have Dominic Engel also heading into the pit lane with Rampazzo. So the main thing to keep an eye on now is where is Yotautas?
I think I'm just going to throw out a name here, because I think I found out who that reversing driver was. I think it might have been Tommaso Baseggio, the Italian in the Acura, unless he's got going, or it might be Jamie Edwards. Not just having a look here, or it might be no, it can't be the Mercedes. That was not a Mercedes. So still looking down here potentially, but might be I'm getting Pablo Denisco at some point in my ears. We'll have to keep an eye. No, it can't be Baseggio, because he's now got going. So we'll try and maybe get back to you on this one at a later stage.
Indeed, as now Yotautas has, of course, pitted a lap earlier, but it's not worked out. He's came out in third, 2 seconds back from Anders Meyer. Leitner has jumped him in the pit lane, and Steinhoff nearly got past the Corvette, but just couldn't quite make it work on the exit and lost out by a couple of tenths to Yotautas in the Corvette. So a great stop by our top 4 here. But of course, it's Meyer now that leads by nearly a second to Leitner, and realistically would like to break that second to, of course, not allow any slipstream for the Mercedes behind, as we, of course, see here our race leader heading down in towards the chicane And then here, Norbert Leitner in P2. And then, of course, you have Tautus a little bit further back, 1.5 seconds back from our top two here. Of course, has had the best pace, I think, so far this evening. Had a pole position, and now has to show what he can do and bring that gap down. But what's happened to Maya there? Because that gap has shot down from a second to Leitner being in the lead, and now Maya is 3/10 away. So I think he's messed up his exit from the chicane and, of course, lost all of that speed in doing so.
Yeah, that looks like exactly what's happened there. Norbert Leitner will now be in the lead of this race here at Daytona. I think that also we've got a final name here for the driver who exited the race. It was Pierre Bourdage. Unfortunately for him, unless it looks like Bezeggia has now come back down the timing screen. So it's either one of the two. I'm going to stick with Bourdage on this one, the Frenchman, the Acura. So we'll slap that on for now. Meanwhile, this battle's starting to really get quite intense here. There's still another 4 drivers. Again, we're resuming this one, but the traffic is well, it's not. There's a little bit of traffic here, but you know, if it becomes problematic, then that's going to very much throw a monster in the ring. I wonder if how that's gonna really open this race up. Leitner is gonna very easy slice past, as well as Mayer, as well. The Norwegian's gonna try and grab a little bit of Cipcium as well. Down through the banking they go, and onto the Le Mans chicane. This is gonna start getting very spicy, especially if they start battling. They'll bring the Lithuanian and German back into contention as well.
Certainly, because I think Tautus will certainly close that back up, and of course Steinhoff will follow through as well, and we're going to have possibly a nice 4-way battle for the lead. Of course, Leitner leads it in the Mercedes ahead of the BMW of Anders Meyer, as here we have a replay of what happened earlier on. This is Giurini, Arturo Giurini, as they head their way through the chicane. What's happened here? Another case of hitting the grass, and then of course, well, just pile driving into the barriers, and well, that is pretty much race ending, unfortunately, for Giurini. Of course, can get it towed back and repaired, but you're going to lose so much time in doing so. So a big shame indeed for Giurini. But of course, there's many more rounds to go, another 9 in this championship to be precise. But here we go once again. Lap 22, nearly 40 minutes of our way through, and Steinhoff is closing in. He's looking for a move to jump up into 3rd place ahead of Tautus. Can't find the move there, but you could see edging closer lap after lap. But the good thing is our top 4 can afford to battle, because the gap back to Urbizu is 6 seconds. So if they want to battle, they can. They're not going to lose enough time for those behind to catch up and get involved. And then, of course, we have behind Urbizu and Kern, we have Loveridge, Kerkeeper, Herbino, Giovannini, all having their own little battles as they head into the end of the 2nd sector.
They absolutely are, and it looks like there's some very, very tight battles going on out on track here. Eros Giannani as well, been very, very consistent in this race, but dropped back unfortunately to the positions where you really don't want to be. So, not an ideal position there for him, but you know, that top 4, you know, you can't really turn your eyes away from it. Paluch is also on the back of this one as well. Our Pro-Am category leader ahead of Roman Bokla in the Acura. So look for a Ford, look for an Acura there. And in fact, he's at the back of the queue. Paluch is right at the back of this queue. In fact, you're just seeing there, just behind the 2 McLarens, and he's really got the pace on. We'll have to see if this kind of continues already. There's a big eye opener, I think, all around this ARL GT3 trophy paddock about his pace so far, and will it kind of convert to the next couple of rounds, or this kind of a one-off appearance for Paluch in the potential top 10 overall pace? And you don't really get to see that too much in these types of championships. Meanwhile, going on the defensive there, I think that looks like Keeper, who's defending there from Loveridge, and the Ford Mustang still keeping his position in toward the horseshoe. The 2 McLarens now battling his side by side going in toward the horseshoe, and I wonder if that red and black and white car of Giannani is just going to have to hold back on Herbino. No contact needed for these 2 guys, because of course Herbino, being the lead McLaren manufacturer driver, they need these kind of points as well.
Yeah, they certainly do, as here we can see on board with Gio Anini as we head our way, of course, into the braking zone before the bank in turn 7. On the brakes we go, then to second gear, then immediately back on the throttle, trying to keep yourself straight with the car ahead and, of course, use that slipstream, use that benefit. Then this long straight in towards the chicane, of course, you can see here closing in, but never quite enough to make a move, just enough to stay with the car rather comfortably and, of course, stop those behind catching up. I mean, that gap there between Palak and Bokler has been the same for many, many laps. We all know there's, of course, more than a tenth between those guys in difference of pace, so it just shows how benefiting that slipstream is here. As that's a sign, and that's into the wall for Gio Anini, into the barriers. The third time we've seen that happen this evening, and unfortunately, it was one of our pros who was on for a potentially top 7 spot here.
It was, and that's the way that Daytona bites, and it bites hard here. We're going to replay Giannanini in towards the chicane. He goes, just grab that inside, that unsettled the car, and the minute he got on that other curb to try and get an exit, it just got away from him. And the Delta V Racing McLaren driver has unfortunately found the barriers on the right-hand side. I think he'll come into pit lane to get that repaired, but now we're seeing Loveridge, who is currently sits in P8. I think we've had a bit of a change. I think Joe Tatus was being fought with Steinhoff there, but it looks like he's staying ahead for now. The Mercedes very much starting to again get onto the back once again of the Acura, but the Chevrolet, but he's just not quite showing the same pace as he showed in these early couple of stages. They're able to pick it up a little bit, unless he's doing some fuel saving towards the end, I wonder, because remember, there is a 60% maximum fuel level, so there will be a bit more fuel save when they head into this last 18 minutes of the race, and Joe Tautas very much having to keep on pace. We can have a replay here of another incident here. This Eric Rose said, oh, this is full wide. This is not going to end well. Oh, where is it coming from? It's a McLaren. Oh, I think there's a bit of understeer on that one. Eric Rose being the innocent party on that one. Oh, he's going to rejoin in front of the Mercedes as well. It's always scary to see a car rejoining and hold yourself with bated breath there to see if there was going to be another accident, unfortunately, there. And we look back here with Harold Astrotatus, the Lithuanian, who is looking to keep his defensive guard up here, but he's wanting, I think, to charge forward toward that front two. But to do that is a very difficult story.
Yep, it certainly is. Of course, it's not been the best second stint for Utautus. Of course, the first stint was perfect, led all the way until the pit stop, and now, of course, has not made that pit stop worked, went a lap early, hasn't worked, now has got a lot of time to gain on our top two here, and has had Steinhoff in the Mercedes on his rear a lot here, and has lost time because of the battling. I think for a moment Steinhoff did make a move, but it must have been an up and under, or maybe a mistake from Steinhoff, which allowed Joe Tautas to go back up into third place, but of course that has cost them their time here in this race. And of course, further back we still have the battle between Urbazu and Kern. This is for P5, and then even further back we have Kiefer on the back of Udard. Of course, this is the second place driver in the AM category. Of course, the leader is still Jacopo Rampazzo, who is up in P60, and a great drive for the AM driver. Kiefer in second, and then Maltrek is in third, a few positions below. And looking at likes of May and Neo, it's not been the best race for those guys, has it?
No, it has not, in fact, in this one. But Lenny Kiefer has gone up 28 places from his starting position. So he's done a really, really good effort here. Here's Mikko Nurmi in his Ford Mustang. He seems to be chasing the second place here of the Ukrainian. That is... here, but Alexei Bari. So he's looking to having to play the defensive role here now, with me looking down below the apron. He's coming into the pit lane, it looks like. Wonder if he's maybe missing a bit of fuel, or I've been told that it looks like his first pit stop here, so he's left it quite late on this one. So managed to get on a lot of fuel there until now. there's still a couple of cars in the pit lane as well, so I wonder how that's going to be turning out for a late pit stop here for these guys. But you can see they're tumbling down the field, unfortunately, for our pro amateur.
Yeah, not being the best race for Nurmi. Of course, started well, but yes, it seems to go on. It's just failed, and he's got into incidents. He's left things a bit too early, too late, and unfortunately, not going to be the best result. But of course, can bounce back in future rounds. That is for sure. And either way, you still get points here in this championship all the way down to the rear of the field. So you're still going to take home a good chunk of points either way. So there's nothing to worry about for Nurmi in terms of not scoring many points in the first round. It's it's always a bit of like an installation round. Everybody's trying to figure out who's who, what how they can battle with other drivers, but also figure out their overall pace. Of course, if you're at the top now, you most likely can figure out you'll be at the top over the season. Of course, things can change, but you start to figure out whereabouts you're in the field, and that's why sometimes a mistake or a poor race in the first round, you can kind of ignore it and just continue on and push on as the rounds go on. As here we can see Stephen David in P15. Haven't seen much of Stephen in this race in the Acura. He's currently on the back of Jacopo Rampazzo, who is the leader for the AM category. So this could be a spicy battle between the two, but also it could be the case of Rampazzo kind of letting him through, because if he knows David is quicker, there's no point getting into contact and incidents when you could, it could be at the cost of your race win. But looking further ahead, what has happened? Tiotatus has dropped 3 seconds behind Steinhoff. Steinhoff has dropped a second back from where he was earlier on. I think those two have ran into a bit of contact here, Adam.
It looks like they have. In fact, Tautus there on the inside line. That's a very, very wide entry for the Pedro, and the ridge went on him. Oh, that is a big moment there for Tautus. And I think the reason with that is he just got wide dipped on the grass. Remember, the grass is very, very slippery, and just shot him on toward the left-hand side and in toward the barrier on the left-hand side. Have a look and see how that turns out from the air above you. CEO Towns is going very aggressively here. You see the car moving around and the braking there. And he tries to get on throttle. The rear says, no, you don't. And spins him around. And I think Yotatis there is going to be very, very unfortunate on that, on the Lithuanian driver. Because I had this thought in my head of... two ways that a championship in sim racing can go. You either get that driver that just wins the majority of the rounds, wins about 6 or 7 or 8 rounds, and absolutely dominate the championship, or you get one where it's just consistency is key, multiple winners all throughout the season. And that is exactly what we kind of want. We want the latter of that. And we know that Yotatis is fast. We know that he's the runner-up from the championship last year. He was leading this race in the first stint. So there's no reason why this is going to be a little bit of a blip in his championship. And he can definitely come back. Because remember, after this, there's still 9 rounds to go. Plenty of points up for grabs. It's just about keeping the car on the road for as long as you possibly can. And here is Matt Loveridge in his little tussle here, right towards the end of the row of pro cars, with Paluch right behind there in the top 10 for the Ford Mustang. He's had an absolutely epic race here, Nathan.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you look through, noticing a few of the drivers, some of them have had really good races. Of course, like I said at the start, a lot of the Pro-Ams, their main aim is, they're quicker than the AMs. They're not quite as quick as the pros. So their aim is just to try and capitalise off mistakes from the pros ahead and possibly some of their fellow Pro-Ams ahead, and that's what the likes of Paluk and Bari have done. Of course, Paluk was near the front anyway, but Bari was down, I think, in P5 in class. Now up into second quite comfortably, but of course has Mielda in that little battle too. So, yes, consistency is key, and not crashing. I mean, that's an obvious one, but it's something we should mention. That is also a key way to having a good race here in this championship. But here is Nikolai Mielda in the BMW, closing in on the Acura of Bahrain as they head their way into the chicane. Of course, try not to hit the grass on the exit, because that never ends well. We've seen that not end well for many drivers so far in this race, but they've both made it through rather nicely. So we are at the 49-minute mark, just over 10 minutes to go until the white flag and checkered flag inevitably comes out. And I mean, I can't see our top two change. Well, they might change for position, but I can't see those two now dropping down to third or below. I think as long as they keep consistent and don't make mistakes, they're sorted with the P2 or P1.
Yeah. Yeah, Steinhoff is, he's thereabouts, but he needs these guys to really battle it out. And I don't think that Anders Mir is willing to, sell 3 seconds of time to try and get in the lead of the race. And even if he does to try and move and it works, he doesn't want to be giving out 3 seconds, especially if you can see that on his relative. Leitner has been so strong this race. I think he's been a bit of a quiet weapon, especially when he was sitting fourth and sitting right behind the likes of Meyer and Steinhoff, and of course Joe Tautus. He was very much going to be the one I thought to maybe get a sneak a podium, but he's been so consistent with the pace, and the stop has gone so well, and you're seeing how close this battle is over the course of a lap, and it's just staying that 0.3 of a second between the two. Flash of the lights there from the Norwegian driver. It does look to potentially go on through, and he will just have to try and bide his time for now. Where does he make his move? I think it's just going to be one where he's just going to look to hopefully make it in the last dying moments of this race. So I think that's the way he's going to try and hopefully work this one out. But overall, I think there's going to be a lot of things having to a lot to keep an eye on.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Loveridge here on the back of Kerkeeper. These guys have been in a battle all since that second stint. Of course, Herbano and Panak included have just been there consistently running behind each other, and so far doing a great job. And Bokler as well, starting to edge himself a little bit closer here to that 7th place battle. Could even get himself involved if he can start cooking up in the next 8 or 9 minutes of this race. As I think we see Neo and Valmers, they're having a battle down for 20th, not being the best race for Neo, unfortunately. Had a decent qualifier position, but of course got involved in some contact at the start and has just had to try and work back from where he's been, and it's just not ended too well. So yes, hopefully the next race, if he does turn up, could be better for Danny Neo in the Walk Racing Esports car. And then of course up near the front it is still, I think, yes, it is still Leitner and Meyer in the lead. A couple of tenths separating the two, with a decent gap back to Steinhoff. Of course, that gap has just never really increased or decreased. It's just in a constant flow. Unless you've got insane pace, you're not going to gain in at all.
We had a bit of a moment. It looks like the timing screen is a little bit off at the moment, but I think we may have had there's a bit of a gap there between first and third. It's still Leitner from Steinhoff. Again, Steinhoff losing time there, up to 3.6 seconds is that gap. They cross over the timing beat, and there is a very, very small gap on this one. It's separated by about I'm going to say 50. Not entirely sure on this one. I'm gonna I'm trying to do commentator math here, but I think it's 26,000 between Leitner and Mir for last lap time around. So they're staying very consistent with each other. A little bit of traffic once again, but that shouldn't prove to be too much of an issue. These lap guys have been very, very well behaved in terms of well placed in terms of where they're going to be letting these cars through. There's not really been one that's been stuck at the Le Mans chicane going 10 miles an hour less than everyone else. It's been very, very well done for the traffic, and again, we're still seeing this move potentially being touted up. Einhoff will hopefully see 2 cars off on the entry of turn number 1, but that's for him. That's only for him. These guys want to be keeping it on track in the last 6 minutes that we have of this race.
Certainly not long to go here in this one. Of course, our battle for the top 2 has just kind of been brewing up over the past hour nearly. Of course, we've seen it all race long. They've been 2 or 3 tenths apart, sometimes pretty much bumper to bumper, but no one ever going for a move. In the next 5 minutes, we're going to start to see the moves happen. And here is Tim Kern on the Mac of Urbizu as we head our way back down to turn 1. This could certainly be an overtake for position. Tim Kern has the fastest lap of the race at the moment, so he's certainly flying on pace. Has he got enough here to get ahead of the Acura as they head their way down to turn 1, and Urbazu moving over, and I think that would have been a bit of a scary moment there for Kern, as he was also, I think, eyeing up a move on the outside as they head their way through turns 1, 2 and 3. Still, Urbazu claims that P5, but Tim Kern, he's looking to close in. Give it a lap or two. I think he might have that one covered because he was quite far back from Urbazu, and now he's on his bumpers.
Absolutely, these are the top two in the pro category. Johan Steinhoff also third in the pro category, so he's looking to of course continue on in his race. He's not being affected at all by rotators, and we've just seen that lead battle, but we've got a bit of an incident here. This is Florian Noffler, the Frenchman in the yellow and black Ford Mustang. The car oscillating around in the rear, not complying to the movements that Noffler was wanting in toward that corner, having to let through a couple of cars. So that's going to be a bit of a horrid moment there for him. Looking at that Pro-Am, still Paltrich leading the way. He's done such a brilliant job. And then we have we then have the Ukrainian of Alexei Bari and Nikolai Mielda in the Acura and the BMW respectively. That is for that's for second and third there in the Pro-Am category. And just going through the Am category as well, we've got the Italian Jacopo Rampazzo as well, just in behind there in the McLaren. He's being hounded there by Stefan David, the Frenchman, who is very much looking to try and potentially take that place. But we spoke about this earlier, Nathan, that you know, if Rampazzo thinks there's that David is going to go for a move here, and he doesn't want to, you know, damage his car, he'll probably just let him through on this one just to, you know, keep it safe. Meanwhile, looking at the second and third place, the podium sitters for the category, there's going to be Lenny Kiefer there, up 29 in that beautiful BMW. And then, of course, we've got Malcharek in 24th overall in his brilliant green and integrating yellow Porsche. And let's have a look and see what's happening up at the top of the field. I wonder if there's still a little bit of a tussle going out in front, because there's still a very tough battle. The Mercedes still out in front with 3 minutes to go, and Mir is just keeping on that bumper and not moving away from over half a second here, Nick.
Of course, and Maya, of course, in Season 8 was the champion. He's looking to return to Season 10 and start a championship campaign off in the lead. And of course, we've got Leitner, who I didn't have that much information on him beforehand. So we'll have to see what he can do. Of course, we'll be loving to lead the championship heading out of round 1. And then a big shame for Yatautas, who of course was in a leading position. You was thinking at one point he's got this covered because it was just comfortable out front. He's now in P4 and he's going to have to bounce back over the next few rounds. And then of course we have Leon Mishka, who is classified this season but isn't here this evening. We'll be back next time out. So still a lot of stories to tell heading into round 2 of this championship. And here still there's battles on track. Kakipa on the back of Loveridge, and Herbert and Pallock keeping them for company as they head their way back down to turn 1. 2 minutes to go, not long until that white flag comes out. And here is Mielda and Barry battling for position for P2 in the Pro-Am class. It's going to be the Acura versus the BMW as they head their way around the left-hander down towards turn number 1. Who's going to be the last on the brakes? Who's going to move ahead into second position in class? I think it'll still be Mielda. So no, Mielda's got up the inside, taps Barry on the way through the heading side by side through turn 2 into the hairpin. Who's going to be ahead? Who's going to be second? I think for now Barry's just covered this one off.
And that's done as well, and the 296 Acura just nicks ahead there at the BMW, but they're still not over. Turning their way in toward the left-hander before the second horseshoe. You need to be very careful on the braking because it's a very bumpy part of the circuit. The wide line there from the BMW, try and get the switch back, and I wonder if he's maybe setting up for the Le Mans chicane. He now needs to try and get an absolute weaponized exit off here, get all the traction down onto the road surface, right up to the wall there. A little bit of a kiss there from Bardi in the Ukrainian driver in the Acura, but so definitely leaving a mark there for sure. But look at the gap at the front there, opening up to almost 6/10 of a second. But let's see have a look at this pro class battle still with Loveridge leading the way. That's a backmarker car with Kopika and Herbino on this one. We now turn our way onto the final lap of the race. The white flag is out. This is Urbizu, who is absolutely on the rear of Jotatas. This is something we did not foresee in the early stages. The Mercedes up the inside line. They're still side by side. Can the Acura get the throttle down? A little bit of a look there around. It looks like he's managed to cover it off, unless the Mercedes might have a look down the inside line there. The 144, oh, a bit of a tap there. I wonder if that might be a little bit of net code as well, and they're just kind of pushed the car into a little bit of a slide. But the hour is up, and Leitner is very much on for a really fine finish there. Still 0.4 of a second, and Anders Meyer has got one final opportunity to seize this win, but he's now going to try and get a little bit of a draft. We've watched that gap come down from 4.5 of a second. He's barely saw it come out of a half a second, but he is still gaining with that front engined mounted BMW M4 GT4. The speed of that car looking very, very fast. It is the V8 up against the V6, closing in on that Le Mans chicane, but he'll have one more try here. Around the banking they come for the final time. Norbert Leitner from 6th on the grid. It's been a high class effort from the Hungarian. He's got a whole back straight here to try and fend off. Here comes the BMW. It's less than 0.2 of a second, and I think this may be a drag race to the line. Who's going to take it? It's going to be Leitner by less than 0.1 of a second. Welcome to ARL GT3, and that's not it. Joe Tatus, who's going to be potentially taken on the line. I think that's actually Tim Kern, 19 thousandths ahead of Urbizu. 2 drag races down towards the line, and look at this one as well. We got Nikolai Mjelda, the Norwegian, who's trying to flash the Acura, but no chance there. Have we got another one? Dominic Engel side by side now with David. It looks like the Frenchman, I think it might be, sorry, it was Eberstein in the BMW. That is just incredible, and 6 thousandths between them, and we've got a 5th. We've got 5 drag races. Unbelievable. Nathan, this is insanity.
I mean, I've got no words. Every time I look at a new car, someone's going side by side up to the line. Insanity here between our drivers. I mean, some people might just say it's because of Daytona, but we all know it's because of this, this brilliant championship. We're going to see this round in, round out, because that is what we love to see. Drivers fighting for the lead. Tenths, less than tenths, separating our leaders to the line. Insane racing, and I don't think I've seen a race around Daytona as good as that for quite a while, Adam.
I definitely been introduced to Daytona very, very well. I'm still quite new to the iRacing scene. Still done some very modern circuits, but barely have gone stateside. But there are all the drivers there to put on an absolutely spectacular show in this race here at the Daytona International Road Course. It is Norbert Leitner who wins 6,000ths of a 600th of a second there to Anders Meyer, the Norwegian there, followed by Yannick Steinhoff with Haradas Jotatus and Tim Kern there in 5th place. Then we saw Pierre Urbizu, who was very much to the line there with Rufe Keeper, with Matt Loveridge, Christoph Herbino, Roman Bogler rounding out the top 10 in our pro category. Then we see Kayla May, followed by Danny Neo, who I'm sure had a bit of an active race for sure. Eric Roseth with Eros Giannani, who had a couple of problems, of course, smacking that barrier on the right-hand side. Not ideal for him. Sergio Abajo and Aidan Young with Igor Wazowski as well, rounding off our 17 pro class drivers.
Indeed, and for our pro-ams, it was Make Palak who took the win there, comfortably ahead of Alexei Bari, 12 seconds between those two. Then it was, of course, a drag race to the finish line between himself and Nikolai Mjelda. Stephen David in P4, and then Michael Eberstein rounding off that top 5. Let's have a look at the AMs.
Absolutely, our amateur class here, Jacopo Rampazzo, the Italian driver, winning by 9.2 seconds in his class, with Lenny Kiefer, the sole Luxembourg driver, very much putting his country on the map there, ahead of Christian Maltrek and Johan Palomino, the only Colombian as well. A brilliant variety of nationality. If you know me, I do love my nationalities. Daniel Chialfi, the German ahead, Dustin Riker, and Alex Rogers, Jason Hodgson, Glenn Grondelars, and Pierre Bourget rounding out the top 10. Then we find Jan Schutler with Jamie Edwards, Callum Beevement, and Sam Clark. A lot of Brits there, just on the fringes there of the top 10. Then we find the final ones there, around about 18 pro-ams as well. Very, very good. Actually, there they are. In fact, Arturo Guerini, Tommaso Sergio, Tommy Vidal, and Thomas Coombe rounds off the 18 pro amateurs that we have in this race. Nathan, we've had an absolute stunner here at Daytona, and for someone who's never commentated around Daytona International Speedway, around the oval or the road course, I mean, personally for me, I had a very, very good introduction to the circuit. I don't know about you.
It was insane. Loved every second of that race. Of course, we have a lot of endurance races around Daytona. Those kind of get dulled down a bit because everybody's focusing on, their race and not really focusing about making positions early on until the end. But here, it was constant. Positions being gained and lost. Really good racing, and of course sets us up nicely for round 2. But we have got Anders Meyer in the interview waiting room. Would you like to have a quick chat with him, Adam?
Absolutely, Anders, it's a pleasure to have you in our commentary box. Talk us through that race, because there was a lot going on in that hour.
Yeah, it was a calmer race than I expected. I didn't know at all where I stood in terms of pace on the new physics. So it was I was kind of, am I going to be far behind or am I going to be up there? But luckily it was the latter. I'm a bit. It was a good race, but I should have taken him on the last straight, because I knew I was kind of tricking a bit and not showing what the pace in our straight line really was. But I was too much of a chicken in the bus stop, so I didn't get the run that I had planned to. But yeah, it's a good start to the season anyways, and good points. So all to fight for in the next races.
And as you had a really, really good first in, and of course going into the second, you just sat in second place and you were trying to take that lead. What was the whole planning throughout that second stint?
I took a little bit too much fuel. I think I could have maybe had 1 or 2 liters less, and then I would have enough gap to not have the guys behind in the slipstream. But I did a mistake on the outlap and got a slowdown in the bus stop, so that would have been messed up anyways. But yeah, the plan was, I noticed that the straight line was really good, although the Mercedes was a lot quicker than the Corvette. I don't know if Haroldos had a lot of wing because it was really fast in the infield, but the plan was to wait to the final lap to do a move, because I knew it would be easy for him to get me back if I made a move too soon. But my plan didn't work out in the end anyway. So, yeah, it was a nice race. Anyways, it was a bit calm up there, but that's not a bad thing either. So.
Of course, that kind of puts you on a really good trajectory for future rounds. I think that we're going through some very challenging circuits. So, where are your mindset is going to be for the next couple rounds?
It's the same for everyone, but we're going a bit blind because I have a job on everything besides, so I don't know. I don't have the time to test how the cars are on every track, but I noticed that the Corvette was insanely strong on the infield, so I think we're going to see a lot more of the Porsches and the other cars a lot stronger already next week. But I feel like the BMW is in a good place. I've driven the car a lot before, even when it was not good, and now it is good. So I stay positive and do the best I can in terms of preparations, and then we'll see where we end up.
Great stuff. Nathan, anything to ask our second place driver?
No questions from me, no, but of course, Anders, great job today, mate. Hopefully we'll see you back up there again next time out at Watkins Glen.
With a goal. Thank you.
So have a good one, mate. Thank you for
Very
joining
much.
us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
It doesn't look like there is going to be anyone else in the waiting room. I don't see any more drivers, but yeah, a really, really fantastic opening race here at the Daytona Road Course, and that is exactly what we're being set up, and that is just our preview ahead of the remaining 9 rounds here of the ARL GT3 trophy. And Nathan, I'm really looking forward to the remaining rounds.
Yeah, I absolutely can't wait. Unfortunately, I'm only here next week. 1st of July, I'm away, and then I'm not booked in for the rest of the season. So I've got to make the most of it next week as well, or whenever the next stream is at Watkins Glen, because that's another classic circuit, isn't it? One of those that it's not easy to drive. I don't bother driving it, but commentating it, it's brilliant. And if we get to see what we saw today, I can't wait. It's going to be exciting.
Yeah, a lot shorter than the usual of the Daytona International Road Course that we're at today. You know, Watkins Glen's got so many dynamic, different characteristics to it. Of course, going to that boot section, that's just going to be unbelievable. The elevation it's got as well, the uphill sweeps. You know, it's something to really behold, and you know, Watkins Glen is going to be an absolute thriller. So definitely stay tuned.
Indeed. Well, that's all from me. I've got nothing else to say, Adam.
So that is going to be it here from Apex Racing TV. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. You can also see us on Twitch, and I'm sure we put on other social media as well. You just need to search up Apex Racing. We have multiple accounts as well, and you can also sign up to some of our races on the website. But from myself and Nathan and everyone here at Apex Racing TV, thank you so much for tuning in. Take care, and we'll see you next week on Tuesday at 8 PM when our ARL GT3 trophy rocks up to the Glen ahead of their 1 hour race. We'll see you.